All right, everybody, welcome back to the latest episode of the In the Flat podcast. I'm your host again, Tony Kill, joined this week by Jordan Schultz, and we're excited to bring you our reaction to yesterday's big games. I was, I thought there would be some good games this weekend, but I didn't realize there would be just highly contested games between some of these teams. I thought there'd be a couple good games here or there, but there wouldn't be much to write home about. But yeah, there was a lot of games that probably should have been as close. I think part of it is looking ahead to the bigger matchups of next week. Kind of looking ahead to potentially getting playoff position. It's getting cold outside. I saw that a lot on Twitter. That hey, it's cold. It makes it harder for those teams out there to play. I know, especially if you're a Boston College team in Notre Dame, it was hard for you to play yesterday. And I know, like I guess it might have been cold there and wherever Arkansas Ole Miss played because Ole Miss played terrible yesterday too. So, but yeah, there was a lot of good games. So let's kind of kick into it. Let's start with some of the top. We'll start with top four. I think that's probably the easiest way to start. We'll start number one, Georgia, who came out and won a grind. I will say 16-6 over Kentucky. This was very close. Throughout the game, Kentucky had some chances in the fourth quarter to really pull into this game and maybe even had a chance to tie it, take a lead. But that defense of Georgia just had its way, and even though the offense kind of struggled a bit for Georgia, the defense, as always, pulled through and got them this ugly victory over Kentucky. What was your impressions of this one, Jordan?
I just think, we were talking about before, teams are, looking towards their next games. Georgia, I think, turned off the regular season
Yeah,
attitude right now. They have Georgia Tech next week.
I better get ready for
Um,
that one.
yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. And then they have LSU in the SEC championship game. So they're kind of, I feel like they're locked in more on that than the regular season right now. But their offense just looked kind of flat. Quarterback play was flat. Their running game was really good, but everything else was just kind of flat for them. They didn't look like the Georgia team we saw against Oregon or anything. But we're so far into the season, we've seen Georgia so many times just look like they should lose games. But I definitely thought with how Kentucky's playing this year and Will Levis not playing that great, I thought Georgia would blow this team out. But did not look like it. I think, like I said, their offense looked stale.
Yeah, I think Georgia's had a habit this year of playing a little bit down to the competition. We thought they were done with that, but they apparently are not. I think it's hard. You had a couple of big contests. You beat a Tennessee, and then you maybe come down a little bit here to Kentucky. Stetson Bennett only had 116 yards passing and one interception. So again, not a great day for him. But the running game is always what they lean on, and the defense. So they're 11-0. They go to Georgia Tech again. Georgia Tech's not going to be easy, as we'll talk about them in a minute. But they came off a nice victory over North Carolina this weekend. All right, let's move ahead to the number two team in the land, and that is Ohio State. So Ohio State, if you just kind of looked at the box score, you may not realize this was as close because Ohio State scored like a last second touchdown with like 9 seconds to go to make this look like a 13-point lead game. But really, this was a much closer game than that. It was 36-30. Maryland had the ball with like 45 seconds, 50 seconds to go. The drive down the field, and they had a really good defensive play where they took out the quarterback, got the ball, scored a touchdown, and the game was over. They won 43-30. But this was, again, another slogfest here. That defense of Ohio State had their worst game of the year. This looked like the Ohio State defense of last year, honestly. But again, it could be that they're looking ahead again to Michigan next week. And Maryland, had a pulse with their offense. They haven't played a lot of teams with pulses with their offense this year. Even when they played Notre Dame, we didn't have a pulse there with Notre Dame's offense. So I think if this was interesting matchup. I think it got them ready for next weekend, the potential playoff. But what are your thoughts on Ohio State?
Um, to me, they're right now the best offense in college football. They can score willingly. I mean, it showed right here. They just out offensed Maryland. That was the biggest thing that I saw, with this game is they out offense. Their defense, both defense couldn't stop anyone, but they really just out offensed each other, or Ohio State out offense Maryland, and but not a lot to say. I mean, like you said, they're looking ahead. The two undefeated teams, Ohio State, Michigan, and it's the first time that they have played since 2006 where they're both undefeated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now everyone's looking ahead, and it sucks that people are looking ahead because we're going to talk about it here. North Carolina, I think, was looking ahead too, but they lost to Georgia Tech. So, I just don't. I think if Ohio State can find their defense, I think it's going to be better going to the end. But right now, their defense looks kind of lost.
Yep. No. Totally agree there. But yeah, no, I agree. I think Ohio State's offense is probably the best in the country, especially with I think being a little better than Tennessee at this point. They just have to have that defense show up a little more, and I think part of it was maybe they were just not as fully engaged because they're ready for next week. So interesting see what next week looks like. And speaking of next week, Michigan coming off a very close 19-17 last-second field goal win over Illinois. Now you especially have been talking up this game in Illinois and Chase Brown, and so it lived up to that hype. I thought Michigan had a chance to kind of put this game away in the first quarter. They were up 7-0. They had a couple of long drives that Illinois were able to kind of stuff them on in their own side of in the red zone there, and I thought that if they could have scored another touchdown there in the first quarter, this game would have been tough for Illinois to come back to because the offense that they run. But they were able to hold on for that and get to the second half and really use Chase Brown to really have a kind of explosive second half there to take the lead. And there's a chance you thought they might win, but Michigan was able to hold on. Also in this game, Blake Corum, the running back for Michigan, got hurt. We don't know what his status is for. I know I think he came back in this game, but I don't know what his status is for the next game. How his injury is, how will it do once he sits. But I will say, without Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy did not look as good as he has looked. So, what are your thoughts there, Michigan?
I think if Corum doesn't play next week, they're gonna lose. I think they run their offense through Corum. I think J.J. McCarthy's too young, still not 100% ready to get the offense running through him. He looked, like you said, he did not look consistent. He did not look like the J.J. McCarthy we probably seen like a couple times here and there. But if Blake Corum's not in, they definitely are going to be able. They're going to lose. Just offensively, they can't compete. They can't stay with Ohio State's huge talents they have, and also, Ohio State, especially just going ahead next week, has a good running back, and they had a good running game last week or this week against Maryland, and Illinois really exploited that Michigan defense in the run game with, Chase Brown having 140 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Like he kind of controlled that game. That's why it was so close, I think, and without Blake Corum, I think it would have been a different game if Blake Corum played the whole game. I think Michigan would have pulled away like they have, several times this year. But without him, they just looked different. They didn't look complete. Their offense didn't look, like they have been.
Yep. Oh, for sure. I will say, one thing with Ohio State to watch out for, though. I mean, Henderson got hurt this game, and Mike Williams is also out, and so they're down potentially 2 running backs. I don't know if Henderson's going to be back. I don't know if Maya Williams is going to be back for next week's game. Something to keep an eye on. They're down to the third-string freshman running back who looks good. I mean, he's been running the ball good, but that's a depth issue. Yeah, I don't think you might have to run him to the ground, and if he gets injured or anything happens, they're going to be in a serious trouble if you don't have the effort to. So it's another thing to keep an eye on. A lot of injuries piling up for a lot of teams this time of year, so something to keep an eye on for next week's big game there. Let's talk about the other number top 4 team, TCU. So they were able to pull up a really thrilling last-second field goal win against Baylor. Baylor really owned this game. They were winning for most of this game until the end, where TCU was able to hit this really dramatic, like run-off field goal. So, this was on the road, so a tough environment for TCU. But what did you think of TCU's performance here?
They are probably one of the most dominant fourth quarter teams right now. I feel like I seem to always be, see them down going into the fourth quarter, and then they come back and somehow win against like Kansas State. They did, or Kansas. They did the same thing, things like that. And I don't know. I feel like I want them to be in the top four. I want them to be in the college football playoffs. But their opponents are different than these Big 12 opponents. Are different than this Baylor team. Are different than the Kansas team we saw earlier. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan are different animals, and I don't know if TCU is going to be able to pull out a win like this again against, like I said, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, or anything. But, with that being said, I think that was a huge win for TCU. I needed to stay undefeated. They need to run the table, win the Big 12 championship, all that to be able in. And I think, they play consistently, but when their defense doesn't play consistently, it kind of shows, and it showed in this game when they win by 1. And like you said, I think they had like 17 seconds left until the game was over, and they had to run. They had no timeouts. They couldn't spike the ball. They had to run out there. The kicker didn't even line up really. He just kind of was like, got ready, and they kicked it, and they made it. But still a huge win. I think it's not going to really hurt them because Baylor's still a good team and can compete. Like I said, they were only a 2.5 point favorite. So this game was a lot closer than I thought it would be, but big win for TCU and big win for the Big 12 because they want to get someone into that college football playoff. Tony, you're muted.
Sorry about that. But this is a rivalry game, so I always kind of throw the records out of the window when these two are playing, because the last couple of years they've been having some really good games, and so I wasn't surprised it was a close game. I'm glad TCU was able to get the win, and honestly, all you got to do at this point is win. It doesn't matter how you win, how many points you win by, as everybody is just struggling to win at this point. So if you can just get the win, I think you're going to be in. So especially when the number 5 team behind you is losing, like Tennessee did yesterday, which they lost 63-38 against Tennessee. Now, coming into this game, I think South Carolina had 18 total touchdowns for the entire year. Now, in this game alone, they had 9 total touchdowns. So they did half of their season output in one game here against Tennessee. That's how bad Tennessee's defense played. Also in this game, Hendon Hooker got hurt. I don't know how bad he is, if he's going to make next week's game against Vanderbilt. Not sure if you saw anything on that.
I heard he apparent ACL.
Oh, no. That sucks. So that's a whole other thing, because we could talk about Vanderbilt here in a bit, too. They had a nice win against Florida yesterday. But, man, I mean, that's looking like Tennessee might be in danger of falling out of one of the big bowls. They're definitely in danger. They're out of the playoff picture now. This is always going to be a rebuilding season for Tennessee. I think people were surprised that they were able to come out of the gate firing like they were. But it's a shame that's how Hendon Hooker's career ends there. Any thoughts from your side?
No, I just love seeing Spencer Rattler get back into a groove. What we all remember Spencer Rattler being. Was 30 for 37, 438 yards. He had 6 total touchdowns, or 6 passing touchdowns. So he just balled out, and I'm happy for him. I think this might be a step into getting his confidence back and being able to show everyone that he's who he is and who he has been. And like you said, I think Tennessee's defense did not play this game. And honestly, their offense didn't play this game as well. Like, we're accustomed to seeing Tennessee be able to drop, 45 points in a half, and just be able to blow out a team and keep up with the team, and they just couldn't. South Carolina was up 35 at half, or not up. They had 35 points at halftime, and then they scored another 21 in the 21 in the fourth quarter. Their offense just was rolling, dominated. Tennessee's defense just didn't look anywhere where you would think SEC schools' defense would be and it really showed. And big ups to Spencer Rattler, and I hope his career still continues and he gets his confidence back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what's the rest of some of the other top 10? I'm not gonna we're not gonna talk about these games because they're the matchups were great. But Alabama beat Austin P 34-0. Um, LSU beat UAB 41-10, and Clemson beat Miami 40-10. Now, maybe before the season started, I thought people thought that Miami Clemson game was going to be potentially for the ACC here. Miami has fallen quite a bit since those early preseason predictions. Let's talk about another top 10 team, though. Number 7, USC beating UCLA 48-45. I stayed up last night to watch that game. That was a thrilling game to watch. There were some questionable penalties in that game. There were some mistakes on both sides. Both defenses just looked terrible, I will say. So, if USC were to get into the playoff, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop anybody. They can score some points, that's for sure. I just don't know if they can really stop anybody. What do you think of USC in this game?
I think there's not a lot to think. I think USC's defense is not 100% fully completed, and I think their 10-1 season. They didn't really have a tough schedule, honestly, going through. I think this is their second ranked game they played besides the Utah game. So I just don't think USC's 100% fully ready for that college football playoff, just because they're going to play opponents that are better defensively than UCLA, better offensively than UCLA, and just everything. And I think a lot of teams will key in on Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison. Especially if they play an SEC team. But big win for USC to keep the Pac-12's hopes alive for that college football playoffs. And like you said, questionable calls and just really bad. I think in my eyes, Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't really have that great of game. He had 3 interceptions. So if they cut down on those 3 interceptions, I think this would have been a different outcome, and we would see UCLA rushing the field.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did want to call out Caleb Williams. He had 470 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. I think people are calling him potentially the Heisman frontrunner now. We'll see next week. He has another tough matchup with Notre Dame, and then they have the Pac-12 championship game. So if he does it next 2 weeks, maybe he is the Heisman frontrunner. We'll have to wait and see on that. I also wanted to call out Jordan Addison. He's been out a month. He came back for this game, had 11 receptions for 178 yards and touchdowns. So he picked up right where he left off there. So good to see there. It was a really, again, this looked like more like a Big 12 showdown that I'm used to seeing than, well, I guess Pac-12 is maybe very similar to Big 12, but that's kind of the game, how the matchup turned out to be there. All right, let's talk about number top 10 game. Top number 10, Utah lost 20-17 to number 12 Oregon. So this one, Oregon kind of jumped out in the lead here. Utah climbed back. This was a late game. I would be surprised if a lot of people missed this one, but Oregon was able to pull this one out. There was some. I know Bo Nix was hurt, so I know there's some different quarterback shuffles in and out there, but Oregon found a way to get this done. So, any thoughts there? Do you think Oregon still has a shot to win the Pac-12?
I think Oregon still has a shot to win the Pac-12. We've seen Utah offensively throw 400 yards, have like 50 points, but Cam Rising in this game had 3 interceptions. Only
why,
100. Why?
They're playing at Oregon, and they cannot play away from Utah. It's just a
Yeah.
theme all year long. I don't know why that is, but they're so. I mean, I can see some. You fall off a little bit when you play away, but they fall off like they're a totally different team. It's a shame.
Yeah, but I could see Oregon defensively have a chance at winning that Pac-12 just because, like we talked about, USC is offensively, I feel like sometimes can be inconsistent, and their defense can be inconsistent. So I think Oregon has a chance at winning that Pac-12 conference, just in the sense that the Pac-12 is not a super hard conference right now.
Yep. Not for sure. And who they might not even still make the championship game. I believe there's a lot of scenarios where next week's games kind of play into who could actually make it. I mean, Washington can still make it. So, because obviously Washington beat Oregon. So I don't know what's going to happen next week, but
What
there's Washington
what
State,
has
Oregon State.
what has to happen is Oregon has to beat Oregon State, and then they're in because they're 7-1 in conference right now,
That's true.
and
They
then
only have the one loss.
Washington is 6-2. So have to beat Oregon State to get in.
No, we'll see. Oregon State's a good defensive team, so we'll see. Where's that game at? Is it in Oregon or Oregon State? It's in Oregon State, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
tough
it's in
game.
Oregon State. That's going to be a tough game.
Where does Washington State game take place at?
The Washington State game is in Washington State.
Oh, there's gonna be some chaos.
Oh, Utah's at Colorado. Colorado might be able to get their second win this season.
If Utah loses that, they totally are a different team on the road. All right, let's move on to the rest of the top 25 here. U.S. Central Florida lost. Number 17 Florida lost 17-14 to Navy. I think as we were talking before the pod started, Navy's just a tough team to get ready for. It's totally different. I think you said they had one pass this whole game.
Yeah, one pass and 63 rushing attempts.
That's a lot of rushing attempts. That means some of them are successful if you get 63 of them. I will say. So yeah, it's a tough team to play against. You get used to playing against some high level offenses, and then you play Navy, and it's just totally different. So good on Navy to get a victory there against USF, which means I don't know who's going to win the American now. I think it's going to come down to Cincinnati and
Tulane.
Tulane. Yeah. So I guess the winner of that ends up being the one that gets to one of the New Year's Six bowls. So something to watch there as well. All right. Go around the horn here. Florida State beat Louisiana 49-17. Oregon State beat Arizona State 31-7. Kent State with wasn't tough. I think they kind of started off strong and it's kind of hit their foot off the gas, but they beat West Virginia 48-31. Notre Dame won the Snow Bowl against Boston College 44-0. Penn State beat Rutgers 55-10. So any thoughts on those games in particular?
No, I just want to throw out there that in the American, Tulane plays Cincinnati this week. Whoever wins that game is going to be playing UCF, I'm pretty sure, in the championship game.
So Central Florida still going to championship game. Okay.
Yes, because Central Florida beat Cincinnati and beat Tulane.
Oh, there you go. Well, as long as they don't lose next week, I guess, whoever Central Florida's playing. All right. Cool. Georgia, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but top number 13, North Carolina lost their second game of the year, 21-17 to Georgia Tech, of all teams. I think Georgia Tech was playing with their fourth and fifth quarterback of the year, and so this was a interesting game. But their defense showed up. They stopped Drake May team, and that defense of North Carolina is to do enough. And also, I want to call out that North Carolina probably would have won this at the very end there. Josh, their star running back, God, wide receiver, cannot talk today. Josh Downs dropped a wide open touchdown pass, and so I think that ended up costing them that game. But any thoughts on Georgia Tech defeating North Carolina?
I was high on Drake May. I wanted Drake May to win the Heisman. If he finished strong this whole rest of the season, I could see it. But with that performance this week, 16 for 30, 202 yards, and one interception, no touchdowns, it really hindered his chances. But I don't know. Georgia Tech is here and there. They beat a ranked 24 Pitt when they played them. They kept it. They're a scrappy team. They can keep it close in the games that they should keep it close. And so if Georgia's looking ahead to the SEC championship, they better figure it out now, because I don't know if Georgia Tech's going to lay down and let them win. And I think it'll be a lot closer than we think, because we already saw Georgia have a close game against Missouri and Akron and multiple other teams. So I think Georgia Tech might have a chance next week to upset if Georgia is not 100% ready.
Yep, for sure. All right, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. So Oklahoma won this one 28-13. Not too surprised for this for me, just because Oklahoma State has just been on a really bad downward spiral here. Is this their third or fourth loss in a row that they've had?
Fourth loss in a row. They lost to Kansas State 48-0, then to Kansas, then they beat Iowa State, and then they lost again. So they lost 3 in a row, won 20-14 against Iowa State, and then just lost this game.
God, what happened to them? But they kind of fell off the map. But Oklahoma righted their ship a little bit there with that victory. I think they're depth back in the bowl contention, 6-5. But probably not the season they wanted, but at least they got to beat a rival there in Bedlam. So, any thoughts, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma's defense actually played a really good game. Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders, 36 for 67, 381 yards and 1 touchdown, but he had 4 interceptions. Having 2 interceptions hurt the team, let alone 4, just destroys the team. And I don't know. I think I didn't really watch this game that much, but the interceptions in my eyes looked like they were huge, costly interceptions that cost them score or cost them a touchdown, cost them things like that. So I think Spencer Sanders, and I've never been a Spencer Sanders guy. I just think he's super inconsistent. I think Oklahoma State's biggest thing was their defense, and their defense did not show up this game, and Oklahoma just took it to them on defense and offense. I think Caleb Williams or not Dylan Gabriel had a consistent game, and I think that's what really got Oklahoma over the hump and beating Oklahoma State.
Yep. Sounds good. Yeah, that defense played a lot better. I think that's what you kind of expected all year from Brett Venables' team. I think it helps when Spencer Sanders plays against that team, though, because he's really hit or miss. He's been more missed than hit this year for sure. All right, Arkansas and Mississippi. I thought this would be a closer game. I thought Mississippi would win, but I didn't think Arkansas would just go out there and just hand them a loss like this, 42-27. What are your thoughts on this one?
If you look at the score, 42-27, you're like, oh, okay, it was no. Arkansas, from the first snap of the game, had this game in their bag the whole time. It was 42-6 going into the fourth quarter. I'm pretty sure Arkansas put all their backups in. Ole Miss dropped 21 in the fourth. Arkansas dominated this game. I don't know what it was. I don't know. Like, we've been talking about slides for teams, and right now, I think after losing that Alabama game where they probably should have won, they just kind of fell off. They've had, where once they got into playing, SEC opponents, they kind of, it showed that their offense and defense are not up to par right now. Really close games against every team. Losing to LSU, then losing to Alabama, and then now again losing to Arkansas by a dominant, like the score line does not show how dominant Arkansas was.
I was
this game.
surprised when I looked at the score. I forgot what it was, but it was some large score to 3 or something. I forgot what it was, but it was not a close game, and it was. I can't believe and when I looked at it, it was Jackson Dart was making some terrible decisions and plays in this game, interception and stuff. So I just don't know what happened. This is one of those weird games, and you kind of wonder: is all the coaching carousel talk with Lane Kiffin possibly going to Auburn, is that leading to any issues there with the team?
I think the biggest thing right now for them is defense. Their offense, I mean. Yeah, Dart was inconsistent, but their run game, they had 2 guys over 200 rushing yards. They had a receiver over 140 receiving yards. I know those were probably numbers later on, end of the game, but still, that's there's a lot of teams that don't get that even when other teams put backups in. So I think their defense, the defense led up for Arkansas. One running back had 232 yards. Rushing. I think their defense is what needs to be looked at.
Yep, no, for sure. And I think, for Lane, I think maybe Jackson Dart isn't the right quarterback for him and his system. I don't know. I think he used to have somebody a little more dynamic still. Interested to see if they make any changes there in the offseason. All right, the other top 25 contest we haven't talked about is Washington, but we're not going to really talk about it. They beat Colorado 54-7. So Washington is looking good going into their contest next week against Washington State, which I will predict Washington State will win because I've been riding with Washington State all year. The only other game I wanted to mention outside of 2025, you can add any if you wanted to add any in, Jordan. But Vanderbilt beat Florida 31-24. This is Vanderbilt's second SEC win in a row. They're now 5-6. They're one win away from being bowl eligible in Clark Lee's second season there as head coach. They have Tennessee coming to town, and Tennessee might not have. It looks like they're not going to have their quarterback potentially. What do you think? You think Vanderbilt's going to go in there and pull that upset against Tennessee next week?
Oh yeah, Vanderbilt is my team right now. I watched the ending of the Vanderbilt Kentucky game where Vanderbilt pulled it out at the end. Vanderbilt right now is riding high, and I think without Tennessee starting quarterback, it might be a scary game for them. And I think Vanderbilt has nothing to lose. They're going to put everyone out there. They're going to play their hardest. They have nothing to lose. I don't know if they're bowl. I think they're bowl eligible.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So they have to win next week.
So they want that bowl eligibility. They want to be, one of the top teams. And I think right now, they're kind of scary. I mean, they're kind of a dark horse right now. You don't know what you're going to get from them. And when you've seen them get blown out,
they'll play good defense because that's what Clark Lee has them doing. So,
hey.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Good job, Clark Lee and Vanderbilt. Hope you guys do good next week. So, any other contests you want to mention? Anything else you want to mention, Jordan?
The Tulane, just dominating against SMU. I think that was a big comeback win for Tulane.
That was good, yeah.
So, but nothing else. I think they were up 49-7 in the third quarter. They came back after having that big loss last week. To just dominating, and it's nice to see. I wish they stayed with that, with the one loss. I think they would have been a scary team later on, but right now I think that's big.
Yep.
That's it.
Sounds good. Well, hey guys, that's the our instant reaction to this week's games. Obviously, we'll be back next week, Thanksgiving week, to provide you some good nutrition for your sports needs there. So follow us on In the Flat Pod on Twitter. Thank you for all the engagement this past weekend, guys. Follow us. Yeah, hopefully Twitter will still be here next couple weeks. Well, who knows how that's going to go. And also check out our website, intheflatpodcast.com, to see some of our latest upcoming content. We'll try to post another top 25 or top 10 article this upcoming week to give you our preview. Before we go, though, Jordan, I forgot to ask. Top 4, who do you think the committee is going to pick?
Top 4, I think it's going to stay the same.
Yeah, I guess it will be this week. It'll be the same. What do you think the Final 4 will look like, though?
Final 4, Georgia, definitely. I think Georgia's going to be in that Final 4. I don't think LSU in the national or in their SEC championship game is going to be able to compete. I got Ohio State beating Michigan. I got TCU winning out. So those are my top 3 right now. 4. Honestly, 4 is that up in the air thing for me.
I think Alabama's gonna get back.
Maybe. I think if Clemson wins out, they can slide in there.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's no other team. USC, if they win against Notre Dame and win the Pac-12 championship, they get 4.
Yeah.
But Tennessee, I think, is out the top 10. I think LSU will be 5 this week, but they got to play Georgia still, and so I think that's going to be a tough game. I would have said Texas A&M game is going to be tough. I just don't know. They play Texas A&M this weekend.
Well, Texas A&M was not doing great against UMass this past week. Oh, that was a terrible sight to watch. Just hardly nobody in the stadium.
They were, in early. And then at the end of the halftime, they just left. The Alabama game as well. They were not there. It was empty.
I don't understand the whole SEC. I understand why they do it. Like the week before a rivalry game, they schedule these terrible teams. But it just seems like I don't know. Like you should get that out the way early in the season. I don't think that should be what the standard should be for the best
Oh yeah,
conference in college football. But
what it should be is you play. You know, you're what, four horrible teams, and then after that you play conference,
yeah, I mean,
all conference.
I think that's how it should be. And that's an even playing field because Tennessee, even though they lost to South Carolina, but it's an SEC team. So if they were out playing like Tennessee, State or something, then they would have that victory and they wouldn't have to worry about it. But I mean, I just think it should be apples to apples throughout the year. So, all right. Well, guys, again, thanks for joining us. Again, follow us on In the Flat Pod on Twitter, In the Flat Podcast on our website, and we'll be back with you on Tuesday to bring the next installment and talk to you about the college football rankings. Talk to you then. Bye.